There's a lot of content out there about people moving abroad or traveling the world, being digital nomads, but most of these people are single people. And so as a wife and a mom of 4 kids, I always look for families doing that, moving abroad, being digital nomads, living abroad, traveling the world, and all of that. So as my family is preparing to move abroad in a few months, I want to talk about some of the questions that parents need to answer before making that move, or as we are preparing for that move. And I have 10 questions here that I wanted to share with you to help you with that process. They are in no particular order, but some of them might be more important for you than for me, or more for me than for you. Okay, so let's go into these questions. Question number 1 is education. What are you going to do about your kids' education? Are you going to homeschool, world school, unschool, put them in international schools, put them in public schools? What is the education going to look like for you? I've mentioned before that I was considering homeschooling my kids. I think that I'm a good teacher, okay? I've taught Sunday school, I've taught college level, so I know I could do a great job with my own kids. The only issue that I have with homeschooling is that I really don't want to be with my kids 24/7. I want them to be with somebody else. I want them to be in a different environment, like not with me for everything, okay? And so there are alternatives, like some people might have tutors or other kind of teachers that will come and teach your children, or have the children be in a cohort where different parents or different teachers will teach the children. So it's not necessarily you, the parent, teaching your own child. So I'm open to that, but I think that I'm also a little traditional. So I would rather have my kids go to a traditional school, but because we're going to a French-speaking country and my kids don't speak French yet, then the options of public schools is very limited. It will have to be either an international school, which are extremely expensive, or a bilingual / private school, and those are more affordable. So looking at the different options that you have, definitely do the research before you make your move abroad. Number 2 is, depending on the age of your kids, is to know if their opinion is actually something that you're going to take into consideration. My kids are 10 and under. So at that age, they don't really have like lifelong friendships yet. They're also very flexible on where we go. It's not like they're teenagers and they're like, I want to stay here because I want to experience prom, or I want to stay here because I want to have my driver's license here. Or, you know, they don't have those strong opinions about staying here or even leaving. At that age, they're still small. So really their opinion, I'm sorry, but it doesn't really count that much at this point, because as a responsible parent, I would say that we are making the decision for them at that age. If they were a little older, then yes, their opinion would be taken into consideration a lot more. Number 3 is family, grandparents, cousins. How are those dynamics going to influence your move? Grandparents, are they on board with you living? Cousins, aunties, uncles, do they have an opinion? Are they going to be encouraging? Are they encouraging right now? Or are they trying to discourage you from making that move abroad? So having those conversations early, or maybe in some cases, you don't even have to share it with them. If you know already that they're going to discourage you, or they're going to find negative things to say about your destination, like, ooh, have you thought about the cartel in Mexico? I mean, like those kinds of reflections, then they don't really need to be on board with the whole process, okay? You can tell them a few weeks before you leave that, okay, these are the dates, we're leaving, we got the tickets, it's happening, okay? So hopefully you have a family dynamic that is more open and encouraging, and so you won't have to resort to that. But in case you do, then, you know, you gotta do what you gotta do. Number 4 is in terms of health. So because we are sometimes accustomed to thinking that US healthcare system is the best in the world, the reality is that depending on where you're going, healthcare at your destination might be better than healthcare here. So do your research. Make sure that you know where you would go in case of emergency for your kids or for yourself. But also, if you have an existing condition, do the research in advance to know if there's appropriate care for that, if you will be able to find medication, if you would be able to find the right provider for you or for your children. So again, depending on where you're going, healthcare might be better, it might be more affordable, and might be more accessible to you as well. Number 5 is cultural adaptation. Okay, so kids in general adapt a lot easier, a lot better than adults. When it comes to learning a language, it is known that children can learn languages really, really fast. I'm proof of that. Growing up in Morocco, I learned 4 languages. So French was spoken at home and at school, English at church on Sundays, Spanish on television, and Arabic in the streets, okay? So before the age of 10, I was already pretty fluent in all 4 languages. I would say Arabic, not that much, because you could get away with French, but I was pretty fluent with all 4 languages without having to formally go to school to learn the language. So for kids going into a new environment where the new language is spoken, it will be pretty easy for them to adapt and to learn that new language. If you remember my friend Pat, who was on this channel, I interviewed her a few months ago. That's what she said about her daughter as well. They used to live in Miami where they would speak English all the time. At home, she would still speak to her daughter in French a little bit. But then when they moved to Côte d'Ivoire, now her daughter is like fluent in French. It just took her a few weeks for her to just switch completely from English to French. So kids in general will adapt a lot faster than adults. We worry about that as adults, but actually it's a lot harder for us to adapt to a new culture, new language, new food, and all of that than our children. Number 6, this might apply to you. It applies to me. It's if your child has special needs. So what kind of therapies will be available, whether it's speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, or anything like that, will it be available of quality and in the language that you desire? So making sure that, for example, speech therapy, I had to make sure that it would be available in English since my child speaks English, but we're going to a Francophone country. So making sure that I have access to good therapists who speak English, or I learned that from my friend Charisma, who's also on YouTube, and I'm going to link her channel. She's traveled the world with her son who also has special needs. And right now they just moved to Kenya. And so one thing that she recommended as well is even if the therapist doesn't speak your language or doesn't speak English, you could either yourself, if you know both languages, you can translate, or you can have a third party who can translate on site. So in that case, even if the therapist doesn't speak English, the session can still be efficient and work for your child, even if they don't speak the local language. Number 7, this is really, really, really important. Whether you move abroad or not, you need to have an emergency fund, but more so abroad, because in that case, if you're moving with more than 2 people, so you, your spouse, and at least a child, and something happens and you want to be able to get out of there, you need to have extra money on the side for plane tickets or for insurance or anything like that, just in case something happens. Not to say that you will come to the US, but maybe you will have to go to a neighboring country. Maybe you have to go to Europe. Maybe you have to go to South America. Wherever you have to move, always making sure that you have money on the side just in case something happens. That's something you have to have anyways here. Like if something happens here, you want to be able to have the funds to go to Canada, to go to Mexico, to go across the Atlantic, wherever you can. You need to be ready for any kind of emergency. Talking about money, obviously, you need to have a realistic budget. I've made some videos previously about the budget for Cameroon and the budget for Côte d'Ivoire, and knowing what the realistic numbers would be for you, for your family, is really, really important. You can use websites like Numbeo or the World Awaits, but also to understand that these might not apply to your lifestyle or to your family dynamic. So I always, on top of those websites, I also asked family members who are in Cameroon or my best friend who is in Côte d'Ivoire and whose family dynamic is pretty similar to mine. She has 4 kids as well. So knowing that my budget might be more similar to hers than somebody on Numbeo, like somebody who's like a typical expat or somebody who's only traveling with 2 children, okay? So having accurate numbers is going to be really, really important for you. Another thing to add in your cost is if you decide to come back to the US maybe every year, that's also something that you will need to add inside of your budget. So plane tickets or train tickets, any kind of transportation, maybe visa fees, anything like that that you might need, that will be in addition to just your daily living budget. So deciding on, first of all, if you're going to come back regularly, like every year, maybe every 2 years, and financially plan for these additional costs. Last but certainly not least, something really, really important to take into consideration when you're thinking about moving abroad with your family is finding ways to connect with other families at your destination. Maybe these are people that you're going to meet in Facebook groups. That way you will have that soft landing as much as possible. And the expression soft landing, you know, it depends on everybody's interpretation, but I don't see it as a way for me to have my life here in the US transferred into the new destination, okay? I see it more as a smooth transition, knowing that things will be rough, things will be different, things will be difficult, okay? That's just how it happens. When I moved here to the US, things were hard and challenging. I wasn't used to speaking in English all day, every day. I wasn't used to going to school in English. I did it in French. Yes, I was fluent in English, but it wasn't like I was doing it every day. So I had to adapt to it. I came here by myself. I was in a new town where I didn't know anybody. I had to adapt. The food was different. People spoke fast. I was homesick. All these things made it challenging for my move here. Same thing for any move around the world, not only by yourself, but now with your family as well. Your spouse, how are they going to react? Your children, how are they going to adapt? All of these different factors make any move challenging. So knowing a few people there who can help you with that transition is really, really valuable. People you might know already, or people you're meeting online who can also teach you about the local codes and take you to the markets and take you to certain places where you can start doing your grocery shopping. A few things like that that will help you transition in an easier way. So as soon as you know where you want to go, make sure you plug in into those Facebook groups, WhatsApp groups, any kind of community where you can meet people. But I don't want you to just connect with the expats. I want you to also connect with locals, because it's very important to understand the cultural codes, like I said earlier. You have to be able to embrace the local culture and adapt to the local culture, okay? You're not, again, transferring the US to the new destination. You are going to change, and you have to be open to that. So now that you have all these questions, I want to hear back from you. Do you have the answers to these questions? Are there other things that you're taking into consideration as you're preparing for your move abroad with your family? Let me know in the comments. That way we can have a productive discussion about that. And in the meantime, if you've enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a like, share it with a friend, and subscribe to the channel. That way you don't miss any of my other videos just like this one. Until next time, bye.